Yeah, it's becoming more crowded, but not crowded. Not by New York City standards. Not crowded yet. Give it time. Ready?
Okay. I don't need the microphone, right?
No.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. We're calling to order the meeting of the directors of the New York Convention Center Development Corporation for Wednesday, September 13th, 2017. I would like to note that this meeting is being webcast. Directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Please note that we welcome any public comments on the items on the agenda. To ensure maximum opportunity for participation, speakers representing themselves may speak for up to 2 minutes each. Those representing groups may speak for up to 4 minutes with one speaker per group. Speakers' comments may address only the items considered at today's meeting. Before we begin the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. If so, I'd ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time, and then we will be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Hearing none, we'll go forward. Hearing no conflicts. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meetings of November 16, 2016, December 14, 2016, and January 13, 2017. Any comments, additions, corrections? If not, could we have a motion, please?
Move the minutes.
Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Since the minutes have been approved, we will now move on to Robin Stout, President of the Corporation, who will now present a request for authorization to. Is this the first thing to read? The first item, or are you?
It will be the first item. We have two corporate items before a president's report, and then we'll finish up with two final items.
Okay, so Robin's going to present a request for authorization to reallocate funding under the New York Convention Center Renovation Funding Agreement.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you to Alan Steele and the operating corporation for hosting us in the brand new boardroom. Is this an inaugural meeting?
This is an inaugural meeting. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Very good.
Fingers crossed.
Very nicely
The
done.
governor throw up the first pitch, but he couldn't make it.
Very nice. Thank you for accommodating us. The first item, the Development Corporation has worked very closely with the Operating Corporation on these capital items for the reasons that you will understand as I describe it. In 2015, the directors authorized a funding agreement between CCDC and CCOC, pursuant to which CCDC funds certain OC capital improvements at the existing facility. In CCDC's annual capital budgets for the past 3 years, the directors have generally set aside funds for this purpose, and likewise, over the past 3 years, the directors have authorized the expenditures of those capital funds for specific OC capital improvement projects. As set forth in your materials, to date, a total of approximately $18.5 million has been set aside, and a total of approximately $16.2 million has been specifically allocated, leaving approximately $2.3 million in authorized but not yet committed funds. Also, as set forth in your materials, CCOC is requesting a reallocation of some previously committed funds for Project 80154, which is the East Egress Improvement Project on 11th Avenue. And that will free up another approximately $4.6 million, which brings the total amount of authorized but uncommitted funds to approximately $6.8 million. As I say, DC has worked closely with OC in figuring out what is the best use of this money. And so as described in your board materials are 6 important capital improvement items to existing Javits that staff recommends be funded with the remaining uncommitted funds. I'm not going to describe the individual projects. I can certainly do that if either I or Alan can do that for you. But they are described in your materials. But as set forth in your materials, the total dollar allocation for these 6 projects is less than the total authorized but uncommitted funds, and therefore there does not need to be an amendment to the CCDC capital budget to accommodate this request. The directors are being asked to authorize funding for the 6 specific capital improvement projects set forth in your materials. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments from the directors? Do we have any questions or comments from the public? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm sure I can speak for Alan, and the OC thanks you as well.
Thank you. The motion carries, obviously. Next, Robin will present a request to the corporation to approve a pre-qualified list of real estate development and planning-related consultants.
Yes, thank you again, Henry. This is a housekeeping administrative item. As the directors will recall, CCDC's parent takes certain general corporate actions over the course of the year, such as adopting procurement guidelines or pre-qualification lists, which ESD subsidiaries then adopt for their own purposes. Today's item requests adoption of a pre-qualified list of professional real estate and planning consultants. As set forth in your materials, ESD advertised for 11 separate subspecialties, such as transportation planning, historic preservation, and then staff evaluated those responses and recommended the list of consultants, which is attached as Exhibit A or Attachment A to these materials. ESD adopted this list last month for a 4-year term, and the CCDC directors are being asked likewise to adopt the list. I'd like to note just a couple of things for your attention. Again, as set forth in the materials, the directors at this time are not being asked to approve any specific contract for any specific contractor. That would happen at a later time. To the extent that we need these services, we would return to you as required for any specific authorization for a contract. The second is the adoption of this list will save CCDC valuable time if and when we need to retain specific consultants. And I remember from previous board meetings that there has been a bit of a concern with the directors in terms of perceived or potential conflicts. Many of you are active in the industry, may have affiliations or may use some of the firms on the list. It has been the prior determination, because we are not authorizing any specific contract at this time, that would not be necessary for you to recuse yourself in consideration of the entire list. Obviously, at a later date when we brought a specific recommendation to you, and at that point you had a specific conflict with a specific contractor, then of course you should speak up. But that being said, the directors are being asked to approve this list of qualified consultants, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions or comments from the directors for Robin? Anything from the public? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. The motion carries. We'll now ask Robin to present the President's report. I'll note for the record that this item is being presented for our information only, and no vote will be required. Robin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Well, it's been a busy summer. We have a lot to describe to you, which we'll try to do succinctly. I'm going to divide my President's report into two pieces. I'm going to speak about some administrative progress we've had in putting together our team to follow this important project, and a little battery, which is going to power not only existing Javits, but the expansion of transformer buildings done. David Thurm, who have been introduced to the directors before, our project manager, progress on the expansion project itself. So just to start with the administrative progress, first of all, we haven't got our system down entirely, but we were working very hard on making sure the directors have materials sufficiently in advance so that we don't have crises before meetings. All thanks really goes to Deb Royce, who is organizing. My goal remains to be a week in advance, but at least so far we've been able to accomplish the weekend in advance, and so we hope that's been helpful, and we'll continue to strive to do better. Of course, the directors remember that you Fishman Construction for project management service. That's David Thurm from Blair, who's our director. David obviously is an invaluable. David and I, we have a running joke. If we don't see each other for a day, that's very unusual. We meet intensely for every Tuesday morning for 60 or 90 minutes, and then continually throughout the week in terms of organization, so that he knows what I know and I know what he knows. and he will speak about the team that he's put together in moving forward the expansion project. Also, the director will just authorize the retention of K2 as our integrity monitor for the project. K2 is on board. I don't know if somebody from K2 must be here today. K2 is usually with us in most of our meetings. They're probably watching the live stream right now, saving us a little bit of travel time and money, which is a good thing. But the integrity monitor obviously is an incredibly important part of our team as well. This is going to be $1.3 billion of taxpayer money. We've begun that expenditure. We want to make sure that it's expended properly accounted for. The integrity monitor is also assisting us as we move forward into the prime contractors and the subcontractors in terms of helping us establish that all of those parties are meet certain ethics requirements and eligibility requirements, and that has been invaluable. So K2 has met both with the developer of the transformer building and will continue to meet. And K2 has also met with Lindley's Turner as the developer of the expansion, and will continue on a regular basis to meet. And K2 basically has full access to any and all meetings, any and all records. We've been working with Paul Ryan, who is the point person for the integrity monitor from K2, to ensure that he has full access, and of course he will continue to have full access throughout the duration of this project. He also coordinates very closely with the New York State Inspector General. So the Inspector General's office is also an important part of the oversight process here at this project. K2 is essentially our conduit to the New York State Inspector General. But I have regular conversations with the Inspector General's office as well, so that they know what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, and they're assisting us in making sure there's appropriate oversight for everything that we do. And we certainly appreciate that progress. We also have both an excellent internal legal team headed by Eunice Jackson. Liz Fine is our general counsel and helps us whenever needed, but Eunice spends a lot of her time assisting me and getting things done for the project, and I greatly appreciate that. And I think Paul Conant is here also in back, who's been very instrumental in helping with the transformer building, and I appreciate that help. The directors will also remember that we have authorized the retention of Schiff Hardin, a construction law firm that will assist us to the extent necessary in any construction issues that come up over the next 4 years. We have a 1-year contract with them at the moment, but we anticipate smooth sailing and moving forward. But we hope that we don't necessarily need extensive legal counsel as this process moves forward, but we are prepared in case that we do. In-house, also at ESD, we have an excellent procurement team headed by Jolene Handler. Jolene is here. Jolene has been very instrumental in helping us with procurements, although God willing, most procurements are behind us, but there will be various things as we move forward. David certainly has his team together with the project manager in terms of certain team members that he helps oversee, but there are certain things that CCD as owner will have to do, some of them legally and some of them more legally recommended for the owner's protection. So we think those will be relatively few and far between. One of them is coming up, we think, for next month's meeting, which is pursuant to law, the owner, CCDC, is required to hire for certain special inspection services, specialty inspection services, for instance, making sure the concrete is adequate, et cetera. We have put out an RFP for that. The responses are due shortly. We expect to be able, by the October meeting, to come to you and ask you for authorization to retain somebody to do specialty inspections. And Jolene is helping us with that process underneath our CFO, Elaine Kloss, and we really, really appreciate that. Another important part of the project is going to be MWBE participation. We have extremely aggressive goals. We have a 30% M and W goal, along with, depending on the piece of the project, a 3 or 6% disabled veteran goal. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of advanced planning to accomplish those goals, and we are certainly very much committed to them. We are in the process now of entering into an intergovernmental memorandum of understanding with the New York State Thruway Authority. They oversaw the Tappan Zee construction, where this was obviously an important part of that as well. They had aggressive goals, and I believe they've come very close, if not exceeded those goals. And there was a person from the Thruway Authority by the name of Tracy Mitchell who was instrumental in making that happen and working with the contractors to make that happen. Thruway Authority has graciously consented for Tracy to come and work with us. She'll be working with Moynihan Station as well. But she will be with us, and she's already begun having conversations with Lindley's Turner as to how they're going to accomplish their goals. It's really starting all the way back to having expos where minority and women businesses can come in and learn about the project, and then working through to making sure the business is certified, making sure that they're on the bid list, making sure that they have an opportunity to bid, et cetera, not only for potential prime contracts, but obviously in subs as it goes through. And the same process will be in effect for the transformer building. So that's an important part. So those are all elements of an administrative team that we've pulled together. This is obviously a huge project, and we think the level of oversight is appropriate and important, and that's the team that we put together with your help, and I really appreciate that. The next piece I would turn to is the transformer building itself. One thing that we should arrange at everybody's convenience is for the directors to walk the site and see what's going on. As you will recall, the steel erection of the transformer building is basically complete. What's been going on over the summer is the retention of long-term lead items, and most of those are in place. The purchases have been made. On the legal or administrative front over the summer, we have been working on two fronts. One is working with Tishman Construction as the CMAR. You'll remember they're the construction manager at risk. We've been approving the trade contracts that they've been bidding out. So what they will do is they will bid out the trades, carpentry, exterior cladding, fireproofing, et cetera, electrical, obviously, a critical component of the transformer building. They will bid that out pursuant to our specifications. They come back to us and let us know who have submitted responses, and we walk with them through the leveling process. And then at some point after the leveling process has undergone an appropriate degree of review, they will come to us with a proposed bidder, a selected winner bidder, and then we have a team. We have assembled a team, including our outside architect, J2A Epstein, out of Chicago, who assists us in reviewing those. And so over this past 8 weeks or so, maybe 10 weeks, we have approved 20-some of the trade contracts, which is the majority. We're just this close, very close to approving the electrical contract, which is obviously a huge component, almost 20% by itself. But once we have approved the electrical contract, we will have passed the 80% threshold, 80% of the trades, which is the trigger for negotiating the GMP. So that's coming. The other track, in addition to approving the trade bids, the other track is an actual contract. You may recall that after the directors authorized the CMAR agreement back in April, we entered into sort of a mini contract. We have a term sheet with a cover sheet on it, so there is a process by which everything has been moving forward so far. But there also is a full-blown contract, which is also nearing its conclusion. And the critical thing for the directors to know is that I should find some wood to knock on, but at the moment, between the trade contracts and the various markups that we have negotiated, it looks like that we will be below the $95 million that the directors authorized back in April. As I say, that's always going to be a bit of a work in progress, and I will certainly keep you posted on that. It's critically important. But as for now, we were a bit concerned over the course of the summer because obviously if you only have to step outside to know that it's a very hot construction market, and there was concern that either there may not be sufficient bidders, or there may be bids at higher cost than we were anticipating. But at least for the moment, that appears not to be the case. We appear to have the requisite number of bidders, good people who we would hire at acceptable prices, which are leading us below the $95 million that the directors authorized. So all of that's good news on the transformer, and that we will continue to move that forward. But obviously, another huge and critical component of this is the expansion project and the coordination of the transformer with the expansion. And with that, I would turn it over to David for a further overview of that.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for allowing me to come to the meeting. This is one of those moments in the construction process, which I know a number of you do construction for a living or associated with it, where it looks sort of quiet, but there's actually a lot of activity going on behind the scenes, from putting in the right kind of controls, making sure we have the right staff in place, working with Lend-Lease Turner, who themselves are trying to figure out this design build and working as two former competitors in a joint venture. And it being design build, of course, what's happened is we're trying to accelerate this process with design assist, and by doing pieces of the project like foundations much further ahead, even though the rest of the building is not completely settled. So we've gone through a number of design reviews with Lend-Lease Turner, which has been helpful. And right now, as you see, we've reached that magical stage where actually things are happening on site. Albeit the demolition part of things, which with a one-story building isn't that exciting, but at least it's the start. And you'll see in the next couple of weeks, excavation starting and foundations, as long as we get the permits, which we're expecting in the next week or two. But Lend-Lease Turner is very focused on delivering a quality building on an accelerated schedule, and we're working closely with them to be able to accomplish that. And then the next big thing you'll see is sometime in the summer, steel starting to come on site. And as you remember, one of the interesting innovations that came from the design build process was the notion that when we were looking at this as a more traditional design bid build, we were looking at an all steel structure. And what Lend-Lease Turner came back and said, that parking garage really wants to be one big concrete structure. So you'll see basically at the same time two buildings being erected, one in cast in place concrete and the other one being steel, side by side. So a lot of exciting activity will happen in the next year or so, and then of course the building follows after that. But of course we've been very actively involved with CCOC, with Alan, Doreen, Ken, and their crew to make sure that they are seeing everything and being a building that they can actually use and improve the business. And so that's where we are right now.
Of course, we'd be happy to take any questions.
The construction of the ramp that you're doing through the, I guess, is it through the transformer building? Is that an appropriate description?
Yes. Yes, I could expand upon that, but yes.
That seems to me, at least, to be a rather challenging engineering and construction issue. Could you just give the directors some 30,000-foot view of that?
Sure. This is the ramp that's going through the transformer building? Yes. So the complexity of that, of course, is that although this is one wonderfully big 2-city block site, last time I checked, we're actually running a facility, and we are under duty bound to Alan and his crew not to disrupt things. So those ramps that go through the middle of construction are the way all of these trade shows come in and out of the facility. And so we had to build the building around that facility, which is a challenge. And now we're going to have a construction project that is all surrounding it. And we meet at least weekly with Doreen to go through what's coming up this week, what's our window, when can we do things. So we had to do a lot of work in the ramp, including dropping 2 manholes. And we sat and were able to say, okay, during that period around Labor Day is a time when the trucks aren't coming in. And so we did an entire excavation, poured new mats, poured grade beams. This was a pretty large amount of activity in a relatively small space and in just a short time period, because we can't disrupt what's going on in the facility. So, and we've also had real good working relationships in terms of security, because we do have security for the building, security for the transformer building, security for the expansion, and that all has to make sure that everyone knows what the other guy is doing. So it's been pretty complicated, but I think it's been working well so far.
Yeah, we actually are using a CCTV system to monitor the ramps, so if we see anything occurring that might interfere with the operations, we are aware of it through the CCTV system and have been able to talk to the builders about it and get things moved in the way they need to it.
Right. So I do get a memo in the afternoon from Alan that says, hey, they forgot to close the door.
Yeah.
So, and we closed the door.
And just to take it back up to 60,000 feet, of course, the directors would recognize that existing Javits, the loading docks are on the west side of the building, that they are primarily accessed off of 12th Avenue, and there's a ramp then that leads up into those loading docks. Although obviously those loading docks will be supplemented by what's in the expansion, they will continue to exist. So you need to continue that connection to the existing loading ramps. At the same time, we build the new truck marshaling facility with the new loading and unloading docks, which will be to the north. But we need to preserve that connection to the existing docks, which will continue to be in use, and that's the ramp that we're talking about.
Thank you. Any other questions for Robin and David on the construction side? Guess not. Robin will now present a request for authorization for the corporation to purchase a builder's risk insurance policy for the design, build, expansion, and construction. Robin?
Yes, thank you. So we're going to conclude the meeting with two action items, which are both related to insurance, but different kinds of items. This first item is for builder's risk insurance. Pursuant to the CCDC design build contract with Lend-Lease Turner, CCDC is required to obtain and maintain builder's risk insurance. Of course, the directors would know that builder's risk insurance protects against damage to the project during construction, such as from fire or wind or theft. And to be clear, the policy being recommended today includes terrorism coverage and also includes named windstorm, storm surge, and flood damage, which of course is on everybody's mind these days. The policy would ensure materials, fixtures, and equipment, whether on the project site or in storage off-site or in transit to the site, they're all protected in the event of physical loss or damage. The policy would extend not only to CCDC, but also to Lend-Lease Turner and to all the subcontractors performing work at the project pursuant to the design-build contract. Just to speak about one issue for the moment, the decision to have CCDC as owner hold the policy, as distinct from Lend-Lease Turner as builder, was made last year during the procurement process, and the design-build request for proposal responses was based on that understanding, meaning, in other words, that the bidders who bid on the contract bid on the understanding that the owner, CCDC, would be acquiring this insurance. CCDC insurance advisors recommended that owner hold the policy, which is a common practice for New York State public entities performing construction, so that we could better control costs, claims, and payments as necessary, and in order to avoid a builder markup on the policy costs, because otherwise they would have had to have carried it. ESD and CCDC insurance consultants solicited proposals in the open marketplace, both domestically and in London, as you will see in a moment, and the policy recommended is the low bid policy. Staff and our insurance consultants reviewed and evaluated the builder's risk insurance proposals received, and based on that evaluation, we recommend that the directors authorize the purchase of a builder's risk insurance policy underwritten by the construction consortium at Lloyd's of London for a total premium not to exceed $2.3 million. The insurance coverage limits will be for the total cost of the project, physical loss or damage, and it includes a clause, importantly, it includes a clause that automatically increases the coverage limits upwards by up to an additional 20% in the event that the design build price might increase over the coverage period. Obviously, that is not our goal, but we will be protected. The proposed coverage term would begin now, prior to the laying of the foundation and the erection of steel, and it would extend through the life of the expansion project, March of 2022. This $2.3 million expense is within the $5 million insurance set-aside, which was contained in the CCDC capital budget plan for this fiscal year that directors approved in April, and therefore, again, would require no amendment to that existing capital budget. The directors are being asked to authorize the purchase of the described builder's risk policy, and of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the directors? Any questions from the public? This is an action item, so we need a motion, please.
Motion.
Second, thank you. All opposed? No opposed. Good. All right, that motion is carried. Robin, you have another item.
I do, and another and final. Thank you. I just talked about the fact that our insurance consultants helped us in procuring the builder's risk policy. One of those consultants is the Kevel Insurance Agency. Rose Kevel is here in the background. CCDC has a pre-existing contract with the Kevel Insurance Agency. The Kevel Insurance Agency is a New York State women business enterprise. The Kevel Agency has been helping us for many years, not simply CCDC, but also ESD and many other ESD subsidiaries, has been helping us for many years in identifying risk and evaluating and purchasing appropriate insurance policies against such risk. The term of the contract that CCDC has with the Kevel Agency expired last month, and the upset amount of that contract is almost depleted, but the need for the services continues to make sure that we continue to be identifying appropriate risk and insuring against them and following through on any potential claims, et cetera, et cetera. Therefore, the directors are being asked to extend the term of the contract and to authorize an increase in the contract amount. The contract amount would be the same annual cost as for the original contract. Specifically, the amended term would be extended for approximately 1 year until August of next year, and the contract amount would be increased by another $49,500 to a new total of $99,000. And all the other terms of the contract, scope, et cetera, would remain the same, including the rate charges. So those would not be different. We'll just make one correction from the board materials. They note that a contract reporter exemption is pending after further discussion with procurement because the Kevel Agency is a women business enterprise. It's not going to be necessary for us to do that, so there's no further solicitation necessary. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but the directors would be asked to authorize the extension of this contract and the increase in the contract amount.
Any questions from any director? Anything from the public? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Before we move to adjourn the meeting, I'd just like to speak on behalf of the directors to thank you, Robin, to thank the staff. Obviously, this has been an incredible labor over the last several months. We don't usually say thank you, but we should, and we will. Thank you.
Well, I would also add, I certainly appreciate the director input. Sarah did a wonderful job of moving this project to a procurement, and as I said the first time I met you, my job is really just to follow through with her legacy. So we're hopeful that things will be exciting, things are going to get built, and things will be beautiful and functional, and everything we hope that Alan dreams of. But we hope there will be less drama in terms of the things that come before you, maybe the number of times we need to meet, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously we'll keep you posted on every piece of what's going forward. You should always feel free to call me, but let's hope that things remain on a good construction glide path upward, and there aren't too many crises. That will be our goal.
So with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you at our next meeting.
Thank you. Really
Is there any
appreciate it.
idea when the next